Welcome to the world today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. The U.S. says it has seized two oil tankers in the Caribbean and the Atlantic, with the UK admitting helping with one of them. We're looking at footage that was with the U.S. Southern Command, which was Mount Sophia, describing it as a stateless, sanctioned, dark fleet motor tanker taken in a pre-dawn action in the Caribbean. We'll show you that in a moment. The U.S. had earlier said it seized the Marinera in the Atlantic, which is said was formerly known as the MV Bella, following a first attempt to board the vessel in December. U.S. European Command said the U.S. Department of Justice today announced a seizure of the MV Bella 1 for violations of U.S. sanctions. The UK Defense Ministry reports that the UK has provided enabling support to the United States at its request to interdict the vessel Bella today. The Russian Ministry of Transport says the ship had received a temporary permit to sail under the state flag of the Russian Federation, issued in accordance with Russian legislation and international law norms. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says Venezuela will be turning over up to 50 million barrels of oil following its capture of the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. All of that oil will be going to the U.S. after the military operation. It will be sold at market price, according to Trump, who posted this information on his Truth social media handle, adding that he will control the money raised and use it to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. Well, this comes after he said the U.S. oil industry will be up and running in Venezuela within 18 months and that he expects huge investment to pour into the country. Analysts previously said that it could take about a few months, more billions of dollars, and potentially a decade to restore Venezuela's former output. China, which has been the biggest buyer of Venezuelan oil in recent years, has condemned Trump's announcement, as well as the U.S. reported demands that Venezuela give its oil exclusively to them. Well, media in the United States, citing various sources, say that Trump had told the current interim president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, to agree to an exclusive partnership with the U.S. on oil production and sever economic ties with China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba. As the U.S. looks forward to exploring Venezuela's oil reserves following the removal of Nicolas Maduro, who is now facing drug and gun charges in New York, the interim president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, as we mentioned earlier, reportedly promised to work with the U.S. government on oil exploration, allowing up to 50 million barrels of oil. At the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, veteran journalist and member of the institute, Kayode Komolafe, says there's very little impact the situation in Venezuela could have on global oil.
When you are talking of the implication of what has happened for oil prices globally and how it affects us here, to take both the short-term view as well as the medium-term view. Now, in the short-term view, just like OPEC, as in my humble view, as rationally calculated, there may not be much of impact. And the reason for that is also within the context of America-Venezuela relationship. Because don't forget that the Venezuela we're talking about has been under crippling sanctions, economic sanctions by the same US. The oil industry of Venezuela has more or less been crippled by the same America. Yes, I mean, you have this contradiction. Venezuela has the largest proved oil reserves in the whole world, representing 17% of the total, potentially, global oil reserves. We have it in Venezuela. But as of today, Venezuela does not produce up to 1% of oil. So you could see the contradiction in there. So what we could be talking about is in terms of potential, not in terms of immediate needs.
Well, the U.S. intervention of Venezuela was the discussion at the NIIA Roundtable in Lagos. They were discussing the worrying development it may have for the global South, which has mainly natural resources to its advantage. Well, many of the experts there thought that harmonizing their thoughts on the issue, on the legality of the U.S. action, the proposed response, and the protection for natural resources were worth discussing. Here's more. Surrounding the U.S. capture of the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, and his trial in the United States begins to unravel, Nigeria's foremost international relations think tank put together a special roundtable to discuss the issues and preparation for what they describe as a new world order.
More than ever before, there is now pressing need for the third world to enhance its solidarity and invent the idea of a third neutral force in the world order, to press for the idea of a new international world order, different from the new international world order, which has led to the emergence of hegemons.
While the U.S. has violated various articles in the UN Charter and other international laws, this is a catch-22 situation, as the U.S. helped in making the laws, while over-dependence on the United States inflates its ego above the laws.
Regime change is not a lawful justification for the use of force under international law.
I want to remind you, the Americans helped write these laws you've been quoting to us as if they don't know. They know it. They wrote it. And they are violating it with impunity. And that's simply because, Your Excellency, sir, over the last couple of years, we have encouraged the United States. We have enabled the United States. Anytime there's a global crisis, who do we turn to? The United States.
The experts rule out direct defiance against the United States, opting instead for a unified approach.
You cannot afford isolated responses. The kinds of responses that can work are collective responses. We need coalitions. We need to build strong coalitions. Advocacy, that's the key thing.
Here's a summary. The United States foreign policy remains complex, and its actions driven by national self-interest and shifting presidential doctrines. Well, let's bring in former ambassador to Switzerland, former Nigerian ambassador to Switzerland, I should say, and former permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, Ambassador Joseph Ayalogu. He joins us now virtually from London. Ambassador Ayalogu, thank you for making time to be with us today. And, amidst all of the confusion about what exactly happened in Venezuela and the legality of what the U.S. did, people pointing fingers at the United Nations and wondering, what exactly the UN can do, some even referring to the UN at this time as a completely silent dog, no teeth, no bark.
Yeah, good evening, Marci. Thank you. Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year to you.
Well, we have a situation where a hegemon, a gatekeeper of what I might call the global peace architecture that was painstakingly set up as an outcome of the traumas of the last of the 20th century, and I start for world peace, who turns out to be the greatest infractor of the terms or conditions or the laws that was set up, agreed upon as the fulcrum for that architecture. So that's what we have. We know that the UN has a lot of handicaps. At times, some people call it a toothless bulldog. Probably it doesn't even have, it's not even a bulldog now, but it's there. It was set up by the global community, all agreeing that there is a need to enforce impose certain laws to guide the conduct of international relations among nations. To be anchored on respect for sovereignty, respect for territorial integrity, and of course human rights and so on. There is still need for that, because without these laws, without these specific laws that guide that the three that mentioned, territoriality, sovereignty, we'll just go back to the period of history where might was right. And if you had a lot of equipment, you knock off your neighbors. And we know the various range of wars over the centuries that kind of attitude had led to. So,
yeah, but Ambassador,
yes,
don't you think we're already back in those days where might is right? I mean, the U.S. will not be reprimanded, beg your pardon, for what has happened, what it did in Venezuela. It now has its sights on Greenland, and it's very clear there's no stopping the United States from getting what it wants.
Yes, that's the danger. We're getting back to it, and we shouldn't want that situation. It's a complex situation where you are facing a dangerous challenge, a dangerous problem which you don't want, and unfortunately, you don't even know how to go about it. So that's what the world is facing now. We wouldn't say that the U.S. or even Russia, because we were trying to deal with the matter of Russia in Ukraine. Yeah. Then come this one, it undermines everything. There has been UN the usual process of countries denouncing it in strong words or weak words. Probably a resolution passed, which will, of course, not have any effect.
What is the future of the UN? In light of recent developments, what is the future of the United States? Because all other countries like Russia, North Korea will take their cue from what the US is doing.
But personally, I do not see. I see a bleak future. Yes. Except we go back again and all collectively agree to restructure the global peace or security architecture. Check what we have now, whether it's working. Of course, we know it's not working, and agree whether there can be a way around it. Do we have a global force to impose the law, a proper. Of course, we know that one of the challenges of the UN is that there is no policeman. It's just like you have a policeman and he doesn't have arms to call anybody to order. So that's the challenge of the UN. Frankly, there is nothing that gives anybody hope. Especially with the happenings within the past 4 or 5 years. It's really yes.
I guess you are just mirroring what a lot of people feel, and a lot of international experts around the world also feeling that way. I think the real question here is how to stop President Trump, from going on with his acquisition of Greenland, and he's talked about going into Cuba and into Mexico and other countries in the Western Hemisphere. I guess we'll
Colombia.
Yes, and Colombia as well. Thank you so much for joining us, however difficult this topic is, for joining us in the discussion.
Thank you.
Ambassador Joseph Ayalogo. In the meantime, the International Bar Association has expressed its concern about the recent military intervention in Venezuela, which, regardless of any asserted justifiability, it says, raises concerns and questions under international law. The IBA says it's fully cognizant of the grave and well-documented allegations against Nicolas Maduro and senior members of his government, including serious human rights violations, the suppression of democratic institutions, and conduct that has contributed to widespread humanitarian suffering. It says these allegations are deeply troubling and warrant robust scrutiny and accountability both under domestic and international law. pursue through lawful mechanisms, including international or independent domestic judicial processes. But it says the UN Charter, whose core principles are fully embedded in the IBA's constitution since 1947 and are constantly upheld by the association, enshrine the essence of the international legal order, including the sovereign equality of states, the prohibition of intervention in matters within domestic jurisdiction, and the prohibition on the threat or use of force against territorial integrity or political independence of any state. These principles, it says, are binding on all UN member states. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has expressed his concerns about those recent developments in Venezuela. During a speech he made earlier today in Delhi, he says we would really urge all parties involved to now sit down and sort of come to a position which is in the interests of the well-being and safety of the people of Venezuela. Those remarks were made during a meeting with Luxembourg's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs, Javier Bettel.
But we would really urge all the parties involved to now sit down and come to a position which is in the interest of the well-being and the safety of the people of Venezuela. Because at the end of the day, that is our concern. That we would want Venezuela, the country with whom over many years we've had very good relations. So we would like the people to come out well from whatever is the direction of events.
Let's take a short break. The World Today. We'll be right back.
Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Channels Television, ubiquitous.
Welcome back to The World Today. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning has been speaking again, condemning the United States' action on Venezuela, but this time also drawing attention to Chinese nationals who are resident in the country. The U.S. reportedly called on Venezuela to sever its economic and military ties with China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba, also to establish an exclusive oil partnership with Washington and prioritize American buyers for its heavy crude oil. According to Mao, China strongly condemns this. I want to emphasize that the legitimate rights and interests of China and other countries in Venezuela must be protected. And we're asked about reports that the U.S. is considering military action to seize Greenland. The spokesperson said China has consistently called on relations between countries to be guided by the principles of the UN Charter. She also noted that China would jointly safeguard peace and stability in the region. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has described the recent operation in Caracas as a very dangerous precedent, warning it risks undermining the international order based on rules. Speaking after a meeting on European security, Sanchez said Madrid has never recognized the government of Nicolas Maduro, arguing that Venezuela's presidential election lacked legitimacy. He, however, stressed that an illegitimacy cannot be answered with an illegality, referring to recent developments in Caracas. The Spanish leader warned that such actions push the world towards instability and insecurity, saying the international system must be governed by rules and not by force. The international order, he said, must be based on fair rules, not on the law of the jungle. Well, two other stories now. The coup that happened, supposed coup that happened in Burkina Faso earlier today. The government has announced that there was an attempted coup against the Burkina Faso President Ibrahim Traoré, the military leader. It says it's clamping down hard on the coupists who had tried to get access to the military leader. They are also working on staving off any such attacks against Burkina Faso. And as we end the program, a teenage girl from Chengdu is making headlines across China. And that's because she already holds 2 Guinness World Records for contortion. She successfully attempted to ascend and descend 15 stairs in a backward bend in record time. There she is. Well, looking at her, Chen Zhuyang climbing and descending stairs. She's later seen attempting to break the Guinness World Record of 20-meter body bend walking as her family and supporters cheered her on. As a first-year high school student, Chen dedicates her free time to practicing contortion and balancing her academic workload. Her father, Chen Yong, shared his aspiration for his daughter, noting how the hobby has had a positive impact on her health. He says that due to the slippery ground caused by the weather, they only managed to do 2 and succeed in 1. The 14-year-old, a prominent contortionist, showcased her extraordinary flexibility by completing the feat in an impressive 48.15 seconds. That's more than 4 times faster than the existing record holder of 3 minutes and 33 seconds. In addition to this challenge, Chen attempted to break the record for the fastest backward walk over 20 meters but was unsuccessful. 2 additional challenges were abandoned due to poor weather conditions. That's the world today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. See you again tomorrow.